The divorce papers jammed in the printer. That's how I found out. Seriously, that's how it started. I wasn't snooping, I wasn't suspicious, I wasn't even in a bad mood. I just wanted to print a shipping label. I'd been selling old soldering gear on eBay to clear the garage, finally making space now that the patent deal had gone through. Yes, that deal. The one that made everything different. I bent down, opened the tray, and there it was. Half-printed. Crooked, but still legible. Petitioner, Laurel K. Remick. Respondent, Elias T. Remick. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. My name. Her name. Divorce. I stared at it like it had printed from someone else's Google Drive. Like I was intruding on a stranger's nightmare. The funny thing? I had just gotten off the phone, 30 minutes earlier, with corporate lawyers from 3 countries. They congratulated me. Told me the funds had cleared. $67 million, wired. Done. All for the patent I developed over a decade in secret, testing circuits under the dim garage light while she slept upstairs. She didn't know yet. I was going to tell her over dinner. I had made reservations at that fusion place she liked. $42 scallops and watermelon radish, whatever that is. I even ironed my shirt. And now, I was holding her secret first. The paper trembled in my hands. I checked the document's footer. It had been created 3 days ago. Filed. Reviewed. Even notarized. She had filed for divorce before she knew we were rich. It felt weird. Not like a betrayal. More like an erasure. Like someone quietly decided you no longer mattered, and no one even bothered to inform you. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't storm into her office or text her some bitter one-liner. Instead, I slid the paper back into the printer. Hit cancel job. Took the sheet. Folded it neatly. Then I walked upstairs to my office and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled Contingency Plan A. She had always laughed at my obsession with backups. I had encrypted everything. Passwords, legal templates, account structures. Just in case. Just in case I succeeded. And now here we were. She had no idea I wasn't broke anymore. She had no idea I knew. And most importantly, she had no idea that while she was preparing to leave quietly, I was already setting up something much louder. That evening, she walked through the door humming. Actually humming. Like she'd just come from a spa, not a lawyer's office. She had no idea I'd seen the papers. She kicked off her shoes, tossed her purse on the counter, and poured herself a glass of wine without even asking how my day went. I watched her from the hallway, wondering how long she'd been planning it. The filing date said 3 days ago, but that folder in the printer didn't just appear out of nowhere. She had scanned it, saved it, probably triple-checked it while I was downstairs soldering resistors to copper wire, trying to shave 0.2% off the efficiency loss. She sat on the couch with her wine, legs tucked under her like everything was normal. She even smiled when she saw me. I was thinking, she said casually, maybe we can go to that farmer's market this weekend. You know, if you're not too busy. I almost laughed. This woman had officially begun the process of legally removing me from her life, and now she wanted to shop for organic kale, like we were some kind of Pinterest couple. I forced a smile back. Sure, let's do that. She nodded, sipped, and turned her attention to the TV. Probably felt like she had bought herself time. Probably thought I'd go along like always. She didn't know that I had already called the bank. I didn't wait. As soon as I saw the papers that afternoon, I phoned my financial manager. Told him to separate the funds into 3 newly created trusts, 2 of them with designated offshore holding accounts. I had this whole thing drawn up months ago, not because I was paranoid, but because I always knew, deep down, that if I ever succeeded, someone would try to take it. I just never thought that someone would be my wife. We had a joint account with maybe $4,800 in it. I didn't touch it. I left it there, like bait. I didn't want her to panic. I wanted her to believe I hadn't noticed a thing. I moved all the real money, $67 million minus taxes and legal, to places she couldn't even pronounce, let alone access. By the time her attorney called the next morning to review financial disclosures, my side had already been buttoned up tighter than a vault. I sat across from her at breakfast. She was texting someone, probably that same business consultant she claimed was helping her launch an independent project. I might meet up with Carla later, she said without looking up. We're talking about a yoga retreat in Colorado. Just a few days. Sounds fun, I said, stirring my coffee. You deserve a break. She smiled like that was all she ever wanted, to be told she deserved something. But in reality, Laurel didn't want rest. She wanted reinvention, a new identity, a better chapter without the man she assumed would always be average. She had no idea I had just outplayed her entire escape plan in less than 24 hours. And here's where it gets twisted. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. Not in the burning, plate-smashing, Hollywood way. I was just hollow, numb, like I was floating just behind my body, watching this all unfold like a weird indie film where the husband is too boring to be the villain and too passive to be the hero. I don't know what she expected. Maybe she thought I'd crumble. Maybe she thought she'd file, wait 6 months, collect half of my so-called nothing, and ride off into some Instagram-filtered sunset with her self-help guru boyfriend. But she didn't know about the patent. She didn't know about the offer. She didn't know that while she was sipping wine in yoga pants, I had just signed a deal that would make my grandchildren rich. And the best part? Her signature on the divorce petition was dated 3 days before the funds hit. That meant she had no legal claim to it. At all. But I wasn't going to tell her that. Not yet. There was still one piece left to play. And it involved a man named Bryce, the guy I suspected she'd been networking with on Thursday nights. And if I was right, if I was right, she wasn't just going to lose the money. She was going to lose everything she thought she'd gained. 3 days later, she left her phone on the counter while she showered. I wasn't proud of it, but I checked. I told myself it was self-preservation. Survival. Like checking for smoke when you smell something burning. There he was. Bryce. Saved in her contacts as B. Sparkles, like a damn teenager. Their texts went back weeks. No explicit language. She wasn't stupid, but filled with enough. Late night you awake? Messages. Missed your laugh. He doesn't get you like I do. And Laurel, replying with half-hearted protests. Stop LOL. And, let's not talk about him RN. And then, one sentence from 2 nights ago that made my stomach twist. He still doesn't know? I'm just waiting until it's finalized. Not I told him. Not he's handling it. Just, he still doesn't know. Like I was some obstacle to quietly sidestep on her way to a shinier life. I screenshotted everything. Sent it to a private folder in my email. I didn't plan to use it. Not yet. But I needed the truth. Not the filtered version she'd give our friends. I dug deeper. Bryce wasn't a stranger. I recognized the name. He worked at a local startup. Design team lead. A little flashy on LinkedIn. Too many beach photos for someone with student loans. But here's where it got interesting. His company had just begun pitching a government project that happened to intersect with my new partners. Not directly, but close enough. So I made a call to my legal team. I told them I was interested in expanding our hiring pipeline, looking to invest in new design talent from the area. Maybe bring in someone with a fresh eye for interface development. I mentioned Bryce's name without saying why. 2 days later, I was sitting across from him at a downtown cafe. He didn't recognize me. I wore a blazer. No wedding ring. Played it smooth. Said I was in tech acquisition, looking to build out a design-forward subsidiary. Bryce was flattered. Smug, even. Talked fast. Name-dropped projects he clearly didn't understand. Told me he led creative direction, when it was clear he barely led his own meetings. But I played along. I smiled, nodded, asked him about long-term goals. And then, right as the check arrived, I dropped the bait. I've got a few requirements, I said casually. Full transparency. No non-competes. And most importantly, no side entanglements with clients, partners, or their spouses. His face twitched. He didn't say anything. Just reached for his water like it suddenly weighed 5 pounds. That a problem? I asked, my tone light. He gave a weak laugh. Of course not. I leaned in. No, because see, I've been burned before. Personal relationships interfering with professional boundaries. You'd be amazed how fast something like that can sink a project. Or a person. His Adam's apple bobbed. He didn't smile this time. I left him with a business card. Not my real one. A burner I had printed for this very moment. It said, E. Ryman, Strategic Ventures. He never followed up. 2 days later, Laurel got quiet. Like, unnaturally quiet. She didn't hum anymore. Didn't bring up the farmer's market. She didn't even bring up the divorce. I knew she'd talked to Bryce. I knew he had put 2 and 2 together, and realized he had just flirted his way out of the biggest opportunity of his life. She didn't know what happened at that cafe. She didn't know I had seen the texts. But now, she was starting to feel the shift. The silence. The consequence. And the slow, creeping suspicion that maybe, just maybe, she had picked the wrong future. She checked the bank account at exactly 7:42 a.m. on a Wednesday. I know because I got the alert. She thought I didn't know she had online access to it, our old shared account. The one we hadn't used seriously in years, but the one where my direct deposit still hit when I did small freelance projects. The one she assumed the patent money would go into, if it ever arrived at all. She thought she'd wake up one morning, check the balance, and see some massive surprise windfall she could legally challenge. She thought she'd be clever and say, technically we're still married, and try to grab a piece of it before I even realized what was happening. But what she saw that morning was nothing, same as it had been. Still $4,832.56, mostly untouched. I was eating toast in the kitchen when I heard the distinct sound of her laptop keyboard slapping harder than usual. Her back was to me. No humming, just silence, broken only by an occasional frustrated exhale through her nose. She closed the laptop harder than necessary, stood up, walked past me without a word. Her perfume lingered, something citrusy, something she used to only wear when she was going out, not when she was home. Everything okay? I asked gently. She paused. Her jaw flexed. She gave a fake smile that didn't touch her eyes. Just behind on a few things. I sipped my coffee, knowing she was behind on a lot more than that. She went upstairs and stayed there for over an hour. I could hear the floor creaking above my office. She was pacing, making phone calls, maybe, or maybe just unraveling. See, this was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment where she started wondering how much she didn't know. Because Laurel had always prided herself on being one step ahead. In arguments, in plans, in perception, she could read people like magazines, flip the page when bored, toss them aside when the plot got repetitive. But now, the story wasn't going the way she'd outlined it. And what made it worse, what probably drove her insane, was that I wasn't confronting her. I hadn't said a word about the divorce papers. I hadn't asked about Bryce. I hadn't changed my behavior, hadn't moved to the couch, hadn't even gotten passive-aggressive like she was probably expecting. I was just calm. And silence, to someone like Laurel, is terrifying. Because it forces you to ask questions you don't really want answers to. Around noon, she came downstairs in workout clothes she hadn't worn in months. Said she was going for a mental health walk. I said, take your time. She paused at the door like she wanted me to chase her, ask what was wrong, give her an opening to play victim. I didn't. She left without another word. And the second the door clicked shut, I opened my laptop. Because it was time to activate the next step. I had let her sit in the quiet, let her start doubting her control. But now it was time to turn the pressure just slightly. Not with shouting, not with threats, just misalignment. I sent an email to the leasing office, requested a change of mailing address for our unit. Not hers, mine. Then I scheduled an appointment with the estate attorney I'd hired last year. The one who helped me set up the trusts. The one who had quietly registered my name to a piece of land in another state. I printed copies of everything and tucked them into an old laptop bag she hadn't touched since 2019. If she found them, she'd think she was getting the upper hand. But she wouldn't realize that everything inside that bag was planted. Outdated. Harmless. The real documents were encrypted and stored somewhere she'd never think to look, behind the login of a dead website I'd built back in college. A site she'd laughed at once for being so sad it only got 6 clicks. Funny. That site was about to protect $67 million. That night, Laurel made dinner. She never made dinner. Grilled salmon, mashed sweet potatoes, arugula salad with fig vinaigrette. Her signature combo she always pulled out when she wanted something. She poured us wine. Sat across from me. Wore that black top she knows makes her look statuesque. You've been quiet lately, she said, swirling the wine. Just focused, I replied. On what? I smiled. The future. She stared at me for a moment, like trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly had extra pieces. I didn't blink, because the longer I stayed quiet, the more she would spiral. And the more she spiraled, the more likely she was to make mistakes. And when she did, I'd be ready. I wasn't supposed to find out she'd met with her lawyer. She was careful, almost obsessively so. Different coffee shop each time, different outfit, even parked on side streets instead of near the firm's building. But Laurel never realized how many people I still knew downtown. How many of them owed me small favors from the days when I was fixing their software for free, desperate for anyone to test my prototypes. One of them texted me that morning. Your wife's at Gibson and Dale again. Same guy. Looks serious. I played it cool. Replied with a thumbs up emoji, as if I didn't care. But my stomach sank. Not from jealousy, not anymore. Just a strange, bitter curiosity. What was she saying about me now? That I was controlling? Pathetic? Broke? She always loved telling stories that made her the tragic heroine. And yet, I couldn't help but picture her sitting across from that smug lawyer, pretending she was the one who'd been wronged. I decided not to wait. I made an appointment with her lawyer's firm that same afternoon. I didn't mention her name on the call, just said I wanted to discuss a personal matter and that I preferred to meet with the senior partner. When I arrived, the receptionist blinked in surprise as I introduced myself, Elias Remick. I believe my wife's a client here. The senior partner came out himself, a tall man named Richard Dale, all tailored confidence and silver hair. He shook my hand politely, but his eyes betrayed something else. He looked nervous. We sat down in his office, and before I could even open my folder, he sighed. Mr. Remick, this is awkward. Laurel didn't tell me you'd reached out. I smiled faintly. She doesn't tell me much these days. He hesitated, then asked the question I'd been expecting. Does she know you're here? No, I said, and I'd like to keep it that way. Richard leaned back, folding his hands. Look, I can't disclose confidential information. You understand that? Of course, I said calmly. I'm not here for that. I'm here to make sure she doesn't embarrass herself. That caught his attention. I think she's under a misconception, I continued. She believes there's something to divide. There isn't. Not between us. His expression changed. That flicker, the one people get when they realize they might have underestimated you. Let's just say, I went on, there were some recent financial developments she isn't aware of. And by the time the paperwork is finalized, she'll no longer have any claim to them. He didn't move, but I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head. Mr. Remick, are you implying? I'm not implying anything, I interrupted softly. I'm informing you. For her sake. He stared at me for a long moment, then said carefully, she may want to revisit her approach. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and nodded. That would be wise. When I got home that evening, Laurel was sitting on the couch pretending to read. She didn't look up right away, but I saw it in her face, the faint tension around her mouth, the stiffness in her posture. Someone had told her something. Maybe her lawyer had called. Maybe he'd just hinted. Either way, she knew something had shifted, even if she couldn't put her finger on what. How was your day? She asked finally, too casually. Productive, I said. Yours? Busy. I had some meetings. I smiled at that. I bet you did. She froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, still smiling. Just making conversation. She didn't respond. Just stared at the TV, the volume low enough to hear the silence stretching between us. Later that night, I saw her on the phone in the backyard, pacing. Her voice was low, sharp, agitated. I didn't have to hear the words to know she was talking to him. To Bryce, or to her lawyer, or maybe both. She hung up abruptly when she saw me through the window. The next morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, scrolling through something with a pale face. I caught a glimpse of an email subject line. Asset verification request, urgent. She looked up, startled. You didn't touch anything in the joint account, did you? I shrugged. Should I have? She bit her lip, muttered something under her breath, and closed the laptop. That day, my phone rang again. It was Richard Dale. Mr. Remick, he said quietly. Just thought you should know. Your wife called this morning. She's reevaluating her position. I can't say more. But let's just say she's beginning to realize this might not go as she expected. I didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. I just said, thank you, and hung up. But that night, when Laurel came home, she looked smaller somehow. Like the first crack had finally formed in the armor she'd built around her new life. And I realized, for the first time, that revenge didn't always need noise or fire or grand gestures. Sometimes, all it needed was silence, steady, patient silence that lets the truth echo until it hurts. I didn't plan on hearing the phone call that night. It just happened. Laurel had fallen asleep on the couch, wine glass half finished, her phone glowing face down beside her. Normally, I'd leave it alone. But when it started buzzing for the third time in a row, something in me stirred. I picked it up, just to see the name. Kendra, her closest friend. The one who had always looked at me like she knew something I didn't. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside onto the porch and answered. Hello. The line went dead silent for a second. Then Eli. Her tone was sharp, alarmed. Why do you have Laurel's phone? She's asleep, I said, keeping my voice calm. Something wrong? Kendra hesitated. I could hear traffic in the background. Then she lowered her voice. Look, I shouldn't be saying this, but you need to know, Laurel's getting herself into something she doesn't understand. I waited, the cold air biting at my throat. What do you mean? She thinks she's being smart, Kendra said quickly. Bryce told her he could help her secure assets before the divorce is final. He's not who she thinks he is, Eli. He's playing her. And if she doesn't stop, she's going to lose more than money. I felt my chest tighten. What do you mean lose? Kendra sighed. I don't know all the details. But Bryce has debts. Real ones. The kind that don't come with polite reminders. He's been using Laurel's name for things. Applications. Transfers. She told me he just needed a co-signer. But when I saw one of the documents in her car, Eli, it had your address on it. Both of your names. He's mixing her life with yours. You have to protect yourself. I closed my eyes. The porch light flickered. For a moment, I couldn't tell if the dizziness came from shock or something deeper. Some part of me realizing how much of our story I'd let her write while I just watched. Thank you, Kendra, I said quietly. You did the right thing. Please, she said, almost whispering now. Just don't tell her I told you. She'll deny everything, but she's scared. I can tell. When I went back inside, Laurel was awake, pretending she hadn't been. She gave me a sleepy smile. Who was that? I shrugged. Wrong number. She nodded, but her eyes didn't move from me. She knew I knew something. I could see it flicker across her face like a shadow. The next morning, I took a drive. No destination, just roads. My head was loud. All those years I had been waiting for her to believe in me, to see the work I was doing, to see me, and now, when I finally had everything, she was betting it on a man who used her as collateral. It was pathetic. Not just her, but me too, for still caring what happened to her. By noon, I was parked outside Bryce's office. He worked in a cheap co-working space, glass walls, fake plants, that trendy industrial look for people who want to seem important. I watched through the window as he laughed with someone, phone in hand, his sleeves rolled up, the picture of confidence. I could almost hear him charming her the same way. I walked in. No hesitation. He looked up and froze. Eli, he said slowly. Hey man, what brings you? Don't, I said softly. Don't pretend you don't know. The others in the room went silent. He shifted uncomfortably, his smile faltering. Look, I think you've got the wrong idea. I stepped closer. The co-signed applications. The fake transfer documents. You used my name, my address. Do you think I wouldn't find out? He glanced around nervously. That wasn't me, it was. Don't finish that sentence. I interrupted, my voice trembling, not with rage, but with the kind of exhaustion that comes from being underestimated too many times. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to warn you. He frowned. Warn me? You're standing in a building owned by the same company that bought my patent, I said. They own this floor. They also own your contract. And I just made a call before I came in here. For a moment, he looked confused. Then realization hit. You can't. Oh, I can, I said, almost whispering. Because I pay their salaries now. So if you so much as text my wife again, or use her name, or touch anything tied to my property, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything. His face drained of color. He sat down slowly, jaw tight, eyes darting away. I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned, walked out, and didn't look back. When I got home, Laurel was on the phone again. She hung up the moment she saw me. You went somewhere, she said. Yeah, I replied. Had to tie up a loose end. What does that mean? I smiled faintly. It means the things you thought were yours aren't. She didn't answer, just stared at me, eyes wide, voice trembling. What did you do? Nothing, I said. Not yet. That night, she got another call, probably from Bryce. She didn't pick up. She just sat there, staring at the screen, her reflection in the dark glass of the TV behind it. And I realized, finally, that she was afraid. Not of me, not even of what I knew, but of the truth that her choices were unraveling faster than she could spin new ones. Kendra texted me later. Did you talk to her? I replied, no. She's talking to herself now. And for the first time since the divorce papers hit the printer, I slept peacefully. It started with a knock. Not mine, not a neighbor's. A firm, Heavy knock on our front door just after 10 a.m. on a quiet Friday morning. I was in the upstairs office when I heard it. Laurel was in the kitchen, pacing barefoot with her phone glued to her hand like it had oxygen in it. I didn't move at first. I just listened. Then I heard her footsteps slow, heard the door open, heard silence. Then, "What is this?" she said, voice sharp, panicked. No, this isn't. This has nothing to do with me." More silence. My pulse ticked up. I came downstairs slowly, deliberately, stopping halfway when I saw her through the crack in the stairwell, standing at the door in her robe, clutching the frame like it might collapse under her weight. A man stood outside, well-dressed, briefcase, sunglasses, the kind of polite smile that never reaches the eyes. "I'm just delivering notice," he said coolly. "You're listed as a financial guarantor. You'll need to respond within 10 days. I didn't sign anything," Laurel stammered. "He said it was just a rental application," he said. "I understand," the man said. "But your name is on it. Your address, your email, your signature." Her shoulders dropped. She didn't cry. Not yet. But I saw it in her face. That deep, horrifying moment of recognition. She had been used. By Bryce. Legally. And the worst part? She couldn't even prove it. She took the envelope, hands shaking, and shut the door without looking at me. I waited in the hallway. She turned around slowly, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, she looked genuinely lost. Not performative. Not dramatic. Just hollow. "He used me," she whispered. I didn't answer. She walked past me without speaking, sat on the edge of the couch, put the envelope on the table like it might detonate. And then, finally, she looked up at me with eyes wet but still proud. "Did you know?" she asked. I paused. "I suspected. You didn't tell me. You wouldn't have listened." She winced, turned away. "I thought he cared about me." "Yeah," I said, walking to the kitchen. "I thought you cared about me too." Her face crumpled slightly, but she didn't cry. She was still trying to hold on to the illusion of control, but it was slipping fast. "Why didn't you tell me about the money?" she asked softly. I leaned against the fridge, arms crossed. "Because you told me you were done. You filed before I could tell you. You left before you knew what I'd built. And honestly, I wanted to see who you'd become when you thought I had nothing." She didn't respond, just stared at the carpet. I pushed further. "You know what I remember? That night I got the call, the one where the deal was finalized. You were out. Said it was a girls' night. I waited up with champagne. Thought maybe we could celebrate together. But you came home 3 hours late. Your lipstick was smudged. You smelled like whiskey and smoke. You didn't even ask how my call went. Just went straight to bed." She finally looked at me. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "It wasn't." "What wasn't supposed to happen?" I asked, voice rising. "You weren't supposed to be caught? You weren't supposed to file too early? Or you weren't supposed to lose everything you thought you were entitled to?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. And then she said it. The thing that cracked everything. "I didn't think you'd make it." Just like that. 8 words. That cut deeper than every lawyer, every betrayal, every erased dream I'd swallowed in silence. "I didn't think you'd make it." She didn't mean to be cruel. That was the worst part. She said it like a fact, like it was just another thing she'd predicted and filed away as truth. She hadn't believed in me. Not once, not fully, not even a little. I nodded slowly. "That's the difference between us, Laurel. You need to believe something's already real to value it. I spent a decade believing in something that wasn't real yet. That's what made it happen." She sat there, motionless, like her whole past had just crumbled in her hands, and she had nothing left to grip. That night, she didn't eat dinner, didn't text, didn't pace, just stayed curled up on the couch, hugging a pillow like it could turn into a time machine. I took a walk through the neighborhood. Quiet streets. Faint sounds of dogs barking behind fences. Kids on bikes. Sprinklers. And for the first time, I let myself think about what after would look like. After the lawyers. After the house. After her. The truth was, I didn't want her back. I didn't want revenge, either, not really. I wanted peace. I wanted silence that wasn't heavy, and mornings that didn't start with eggshells. I wanted to be seen, not pitted, not tolerated, seen. She had finally broken. But not because I crushed her. She broke because her own lies collapsed faster than she could cover them. And when that happens, there's nothing left to hold on to. The day the divorce was finalized, it rained. Not hard, just enough to make the windows blur and the streets shine with that silver glow. I sat in the back seat of my attorney's car, parked outside the courthouse, watching droplets chase each other down the glass while he ran inside to get a copy of the signed paperwork. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter either. I just felt clear, like fog that had sat over me for years had finally lifted. Laurel didn't show up for the final meeting. Her lawyer signed on her behalf. I half expected a dramatic exit or a guilt-fueled message, but there was nothing. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Maybe she finally understood what she'd really lost, and it wasn't the money. It was me. And honestly, I don't think she ever really knew me to begin with. But I was getting to know myself again. After the papers were filed, I didn't go home. I drove straight to the airport. I had already sold the house weeks earlier, quietly, off-market. The funds were clean, the split was simple. Laurel got the furniture, her car, and the condo in her name she'd been secretly leasing behind my back. I let her keep it all, not because I was generous, but because none of it mattered to me anymore. What I kept was the future. The patent money? Safe. Divided into accounts she couldn't reach. And I'd already begun using a slice of it, just a small piece, to build something new. Not a startup. Not another product. Something quieter. Slower. A life. 3 months later, I was living on a small stretch of land near Coeur d'Alene. Bought a lakeside cabin. Nothing extravagant. 2 bedrooms. A real fireplace. Silence. Peace. I fixed things again, not because I had to, but because I liked it. I replaced the floorboards with my own hands. Installed solar panels. Grew tomatoes for the first time. Got calluses again. Sometimes, the neighbors waved from their docks. No one knew my name. No one cared. And I loved that. One afternoon, while repairing an old boathouse that came with the property, I heard a voice behind me. Soft. Curious. You built that ramp by yourself? I turned. A woman, early 40s, jeans, boots, dog leash in one hand, a travel mug in the other. Auburn hair. Sharp eyes. No makeup. No small talk tone. Yeah, I said, standing. Took me all week. She nodded, impressed. Looks like you've done this before. A few times, I admitted. She smiled. I'm Ava. I'm 2 cabins down. You're the new guy who never talks to anyone. I laughed. That's me. Keep fixing things, she said, gesturing at the ramp. We need more of that out here. She waved and kept walking, her dog trotting beside her, the leash gently swaying. That was it. No flirting. No questions. Just a passing connection. But something about it stayed with me. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't dream about what I lost. I dreamed about what I hadn't even discovered yet. Laurel eventually emailed me, weeks later. One line, I hope you're doing okay. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. Let her imagine what my life looked like. Let her wonder what I did with the money, where I went, who I became. Because in the end, I didn't need to leave her with nothing. I just needed to leave. And in doing that, I gave myself everything.